The sun was so bright that morning, it made the silver jet shine like a giant mirror. Leona stood on the airstrip, holding a tray with cold lemonade. The glasses clinked together as her hands shook just a little. She wasn't nervous about carrying drinks. She was nervous about the man sitting in the chair right in front of that beautiful airplane. Richard Hale. Everyone knew his name. He owned buildings that touched the clouds. He had more money than most people could count in their whole lives. And right now he was laughing at her. "You," Richard said, his voice loud and mean. "You think someone like you could ever fly something like this?" Leona's heart felt like it dropped into her stomach. She had only said one thing. One tiny thing. She looked at the jet and whispered, "I wish I could fly one day." She didn't think anyone heard her, but Richard did. "Do you know how much this jet costs?" Richard continued, standing up from his chair. He wore a suit so expensive it probably cost more than Leona's entire house. $20 million. That's more money than you'll see in 10 lifetimes, girl. The other people around them, Richard's friends, his assistants, the crew getting the jet ready, they all stopped talking. Everyone was looking at Leona now. Her face felt hot. She wanted to disappear. But something inside her wouldn't let her run away. "I could learn," Leona said quietly. Her voice was so soft, like a feather falling on grass. "My father taught people how to fly." Richard's eyebrows went up. Then he started laughing again, but this time it was even meaner. "Your father? What did he teach birds?" He slapped his knee like he had just told the funniest joke in the world. Some of his friends laughed too, not because it was funny, but because when someone like Richard Hale laughs, people think they should laugh too. Leona's chest felt tight. Her father. Her wonderful, kind, patient father who loved the sky more than anything. He used to take her to small airports when she was little. She remembered sitting in his lap in tiny planes, her small hands on controls while his big, gentle hands guided hers. "The sky doesn't care who you are," her father used to say. "It doesn't care if you're rich or poor, black or white, man or woman. The sky only cares if you respect it and if you're willing to learn." But her father was gone now. 3 years ago, his plane had crashed during a lesson with a student. The investigator said something had broken in the engine, something that should have been fixed, but wasn't. Leona and her mother had cried for weeks and weeks. After he died, money got tight, really tight. Leona's mother cleaned houses. Leona took any job she could find. Right now, she worked for a catering company that brought food and drinks to rich people at fancy places, like this airstrip, like Richard Hale's private jet. "Listen, sweetie," Richard said, and the word sweetie sounded like poison coming out his mouth. "People like you don't fly planes. People like you serve drinks to people like me who fly planes. That's just how the world works." He reached out and took a glass of lemonade from her tray, without even saying thank you. He took a sip and made a face. "This is warm. Get me a cold one." Leona felt tears pushing the back of her eyes, but she refused to let them come out. Not here. Not in front of him. "Yes, sir," she whispered. As she turned to walk back to the catering van, she heard Richard talking to his friends. Can you believe that? These people and their delusions. Next, she'll tell me she wants to be an astronaut. More laughter. Cruel laughter that felt like tiny knives in her back. Leona walked slowly across the hot pavement. The jet was so close. So beautiful. Its wings stretched out like it was ready to hug the sky. She had studied planes in secret for years. She knew the parts. She knew how they worked. After her father died, learning about planes made her feel close to him. But maybe Richard was right. Maybe girls like her, girls who carried drink trays and said, "Yes, sir," all day, didn't belong in cockpits. She reached the van and put down the tray. Her hands were shaking harder now. She pressed them flat against the metal counter and took a deep breath. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Heavy, confident footsteps. "Hey, girl," Richard's voice called out. "I've got an idea. Want to hear something fun?" Leona turned around. Richard was walking toward her with a big smile on his face. But it wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile of a cat that had just cornered a mouse. "Here's a deal," Richard said, crossing his arms. You fly my jet. Just take it up and bring it back down, and I'll adopt you. You can be my daughter. You'll never have to work another day in your life." His friends had followed him, and they were all grinning now. "All you have to do," Richard said, "is fly a multi-million-dollar aircraft that you've never touched without killing everyone on board. Easy, right?" The group exploded in laughter. Leona's throat felt thick. This was a game to him. Her dreams, her father's memory, her whole life. It was all just a joke to Richard Hale. But before she could say anything, before she could even think of what to do next, someone started shouting from the jet, "Help! Someone help!" Everyone's head snapped toward the airplane. A woman in a uniform was running down the jet stairs, her face white with panic. "It's Captain Morrison," the woman screamed. "He collapsed. He's not breathing right. Someone call an ambulance." The laughter died instantly. Richard's smile vanished. Everyone stood frozen, like someone had pressed pause on a whole world. Leona's heart started pounding, but not from fear anymore. From something else. Something that felt like her father's hand on her shoulder. Even though he wasn't there, the sky was calling, and Leona had a choice to make. Everyone started running toward the jet at once. Leona ran too, her heart hammering in her chest like a drum. She pushed through the crowd of confused, scared people until she could see inside the plane's open door. Captain Morrison lay on the floor of the jet. His face was gray. His eyes were closed. A flight attendant was kneeling beside him, her fingers on his neck, checking for a pulse. "He's breathing, but barely," the attendant said, her voice shaking. "His pulse is weak. I think it's his heart." "Did someone call 911? Richard shouted. For the first time since Leona had met him, he looked scared instead of confident. "Already did," another crew member yelled back. Phone pressed his ear. "Ambulance is coming, but they said it could be 15 minutes. Maybe 20 with traffic." 15 minutes. That felt like forever. But that wasn't the biggest problem. "What about the passengers?" someone asked. Leona looked past Captain Morrison's body and saw them. 6 people sitting in the fancy leather seats of the jet. They had been waiting to take off. Some of them were businessmen with laptops. One was an older woman holding a small dog. They all looked terrified. "We need to get them off the plane," the flight attendant said. "Help me move the captain first, carefully." Several men rushed forward to help. They lifted Captain Morrison as gently as they could and carried him down the stairs. Someone had already grabbed a first aid kit. They laid him on the pavement in the shade and started helping him. But the passengers were still on the plane, and now they were all talking at once, their voices getting louder and more panicked. "Are we still taking off?" "I have a meeting in 2 hours." "What's happening?" "I want off this plane now." Richard climbed the stairs into the jet, holding up his hands. "Everyone, please calm down. We'll get you off and onto another flight. This is just a small delay." "A small delay?" A man in an expensive suit stood up, his face red with anger. "Your pilot just had a heart attack. I'm not flying with your company ever again." The older woman with the dog started crying softly. "I need to get home to my daughter. She's having surgery tomorrow. I promised I'd be there." Leona stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening to everything. Her mind was working fast, fitting pieces together like a puzzle. No pilot. Passengers who needed to get somewhere. An ambulance that was still 15 minutes away. And a plane that wasn't going anywhere unless someone could fly it. She looked at the cockpit door at the front of the jet. It was open. She could see the controls inside, the screens, the switches, the steering yoke that looked like a W. Her father had explained all of it to her. She had read books. She had watched videos online late at night, when she couldn't sleep, imagining what it would feel like to sit in that seat. But imagining wasn't the same as doing. Her hands started to sweat. "What are you thinking, Leona?" She asked herself. "You're not a pilot. You've never flown anything bigger than your dad's little Cessna. And even then, he was doing most of the work." But another voice in her head, one that sounded like her father, whispered back, "You know more than you think you do, baby girl. And sometimes the sky doesn't give you time to be ready. Sometimes you just have to be brave." Leona's feet started moving before her brain could stop them. She walked up the stairs into the jet. Richard was still trying to calm the passengers down. He didn't notice her at first. Leona walked straight to the cockpit and looked inside. The screens glowed with information. The throttle controls sat ready. The yoke waited for hands to grip it. Everything looked complicated and simple at the same time. "What are you doing?" Leona jumped. She turned and saw Richard staring at her. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. Leona's mouth felt dry. "I can fly this." For a second, Richard just blinked at her. Then his face twisted with anger. "Are you insane? This isn't a game. This is a—" "I know what it is," Leona said, and her voice came out stronger than she expected. "My father taught flight lessons for 20 years. I grew up in cockpits. I know how to fly. Knowing how to fly a toy plane is not the same as flying a jet." Richard snapped. "I know." Leona looked him straight in the eyes. "But I also know that woman down there needs to get to her daughter. Those businessmen need to get to their meetings. And you don't have another pilot." Richard opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the passengers behind him, then at Leona, then at the cockpit. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. But Leona could hear something else in his voice now. Not just anger. Fear. Uncertainty. The flight attendant appeared in the doorway. "Sir, the ambulance is still 10 minutes out, and none of the other pilots can get here for at least an hour." An hour? The passengers would lose their minds by then. Richard ran his hand through his hair. Leona had never seen someone so powerful look so helpless. "If you're lying," Richard said slowly, "if you get in that cockpit and you don't know what you're doing, people could die. You understand that?" "Yes," Leona said. "I understand." "Then tell me the truth. Right now, can you really fly this jet?" Leona took a breath. She thought about her father's hands guiding hers. She thought about all the nights studying aviation manuals. She thought about every video she'd watched, every diagram she'd memorized. "I can land it," she said quietly. "I can get it up and I can bring it down safely. I won't do tricks. I won't go fast. But I can do it." Richard stared at her for what felt like a year. The passengers had gone quiet, watching the two of them. Finally, Richard stepped aside. "If anything goes wrong," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "if you feel like you can't do it, you tell me immediately. You hear me?" Leona nodded. Her legs felt wobbly as she walked into the cockpit. The captain's seat was still warm. She sat down and the world suddenly looked different. She was surrounded by buttons and screens and switches. For a moment, panic grabbed her throat. "I can't do this. I'm just a girl with a serving tray. What am I thinking?" But then she saw it. On the small shelf beside the captain's seat, a photograph. Captain Morrison with his family, a wife, 2 kids, everyone smiling. He was a person, a real person who loved his family, who wanted to go home to them. Everyone on this plane was a real person. The woman with the dog, the angry businessman, Richard Hale, even though he was mean. They all wanted to get home. And Leona was the only one who could help them. She reached forward and touched the controls. Her hands remembered. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Gentle baby girl. The plane wants to fly. You just have to guide it." "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Okay." She looked back through the cockpit door. Richard stood there, his face white. The flight attendant was strapping herself into a seat. The passengers were quiet now, their eyes wide. "Everyone buckle up," Leona said, and she was surprised at how calm she sounded. "We're going to be just fine." She didn't know if that was true, but she knew she had to try. Leona's hands moved across the controls. She started the engines. The jet rumbled to life beneath her. The sound was like thunder, like a heartbeat, like wings spreading wide. Richard came to stand behind her seat. "Leona," he said quietly, "thank you for trying." It was the first kind thing he had said to her all day. She didn't answer. She couldn't. All her focus was on the runway ahead. The tower's voice crackled through the radio. "This is Tower Control. We've been informed of your situation. You are cleared for emergency takeoff. Runway 2. Proceed when ready." Leona reached for the throttle. Her hand shook just a little. "You can do this, baby girl." Her father's voice whispered in her mind, "I believe in you." "Okay, Dad," she whispered back. "Let's fly." She pushed the throttle forward. The jet began to move. Faster, faster. The runway blurred beneath them. Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. The end of the runway rushed closer. Leona pulled back on the yoke, and the jet lifted into the sky. The world looked different from up here. Leona had imagined this moment 1,000 times, sitting in a cockpit, watching clouds pass by the window, feeling the power of a plane responding to her hands. But imagining something and living it were completely different things. Her heart was racing. Her palms were sweaty on the controls. But the jet was flying, actually flying, and it was listening to her. "Tower, this is, Leona realized she didn't even know the jet's call sign. Richard leaned forward from where he stood behind her seat. His voice was tight with fear, but he was trying to help. "November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha. Tower, this is November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha," Leona said into the radio headset. "We're airborne, requesting, guidance for landing procedure." There was a pause. Then a calm, professional voice came back. "November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha. This is Tower Control. We copy. Can you confirm the pilot in command certification level?" Leona's stomach dropped. I don't have certification. I'm not a licensed pilot. But I've trained my father, who was a flight instructor. I know the basics." Another pause. A longer one this time. Leona could almost hear the people in the tower panicking. "Roger that. November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha." The voice came back, and now it was even calmer, like the person was talking to a scared child, which Leona supposed she kind of was. "We're going to help you through this step by step. First, let's establish your altitude and heading." Leona looked at the instruments. Her father's training kicked in. "We're at 3,000 feet, heading 090. "Perfect. Maintain that altitude. We're going to bring you around in a wide circle, then guide you back to the runway. You're doing great." Behind her, Leona heard someone crying softly. The older woman with the dog. Richard moved to sit in the co-pilot's seat, buckling himself in. "You really know what you're doing," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was almost like he was realizing it for the first time. "My father believed everyone should learn to fly," Leona said, her eyes still on the instruments. "He said the sky didn't belong to rich people or powerful people. It belonged to anyone brave enough to respect it." Richard was quiet for a moment. "What was your father's name?" "Marcus Carter. He taught flying lessons at Riverside Airfield." Richard's face went white, completely white, like someone had poured milk over his skin. "Marcus Carter." Leona glanced at him. "You knew him?" "I..." Richard's mouth opened and closed. He looked like he might be sick. "Not personally, but Leona, there's something I need to tell you. After we land. Something important." The fear in his voice made Leona's stomach twist. But she couldn't think about that now. The tower was giving her instructions, telling her to reduce altitude, to adjust her heading, to prepare for approach. For the next 20 minutes, Leona focused on nothing but flying. The tower controller guided her through every step. Turn left, reduce speed, lower the landing gear, adjust the flaps. Each instruction felt like a piece of a puzzle, and somehow her hands knew what to do. "You're on final approach," the tower said. "Runway is straight ahead. Maintain your glide slope. You're doing beautifully." Leona could see it now, the long stretch of pavement reaching out like a welcome mat. Emergency vehicles lined both sides of the runway. Fire trucks, ambulances, just in case. "Don't think about that," Leona told herself. "Just fly. Remember," the tower said, "the plane wants to land. You're just guiding it home." That was exactly what her father used to say. The runway was getting closer. Closer. The ground rushed up to meet them. Leona pulled back slightly on the yoke, just like her father had taught her. Feel the moment. Let the wheels kiss the pavement. Don't slam them down. The jet's wheels touched the runway with a small bump. Not perfect, but safe. Leona immediately pressed the brakes, steady and firm. The jet slowed. rolled to a gentle stop. For a moment, nobody made a sound. Then the passengers erupted in cheers. The woman with the dog was crying and laughing at the same time. The angry businessman was clapping. The flight attendant was wiping tears from her eyes. Leona sat in the captain's seat, her hands still on controls, and realized she was shaking all over. "Tower," she said into the radio. "We're down. We're safe." "Incredible work. November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha," the controller's voice said, and now it was thick with emotion. "Absolutely incredible." Emergency crews rushed the plane. Paramedics came aboard to check everyone. The passengers filed out, some of them stopping to hug Leona, to shake her hand, to say thank you with tears in their eyes. The woman with the dog stopped in front of Leona's seat. "You saved my life," she whispered. "I'm going to see my daughter tomorrow. Because of you. I'll never forget this. Never." Leona didn't know what to say. She just nodded, her own eyes getting wet. Finally, everyone was off the plane except Richard and Leona. Richard sat in the co-pilot seat, his head in his hands. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly, "and you're going to hate me for it." Leona turned to look at him. "What is it?" Richard took a shaky breath. 3 years ago, there was a plane crash at Riverside Airfield, a Cessna 172. The engine failed during a training flight. The instructor died, and the student was badly hurt. Leona's blood turned to ice. "That was my father." "I know," Richard whispered. "I looked it up after you told me his name. Leona, the company that owned that Cessna, the company that was supposed to maintain it. That was one of my companies, Hale Aviation Services." The words hit Leona like a punch to the stomach. She couldn't breathe. "The engine part that failed," Richard continued, his voice breaking. "It should have been replaced 6 months earlier, but my managers cut corners to save money. I didn't know about it at the time, but it was my company, my responsibility. Your father died because of my company's negligence." Tears poured down Leona's face. She wanted to scream, to hit him, to run away, but she couldn't move. "I'm sorry," Richard said, and he was crying too now. "I'm so sorry. What you did today, you saved lives. You're a hero, and your father would be so proud. But He covered his face with his hands. "I took him from you. I took your future from you." Leona sat there, the anger and grief swirling inside her like a storm. Part of her wanted to hate Richard Hale forever. Part of her wanted to walk away and never see his face again. But another part of her, the part that sounded like her father, whispered something different. "Hate is heavy, baby girl. It'll weigh you down so much. You'll never fly." 2 months later, Leona stood in front of a small building at Riverside Airfield. A new sign hung over the door, painted in bright blue letters, "The Marcus Carter Aviation Scholarship Fund." Richard Hale stood beside her. He looked older now, more tired, but also more real, somehow more human. "It's not enough," Richard said quietly. "It'll never be enough to make up for what happened. But I want to help other people like you. Women who want to fly, but can't afford the training. Your father believed everyone should have a chance at the sky. This scholarship will make sure they do." Leona looked at the sign. Her father's name, up there for everyone to see. Not forgotten. Honored. "Thank you," she said softly. "There's more," Richard said. He handed her a folder. "Full funding for your pilot's training. Every rating, every certification, all the way up to your commercial license. And when you're done, if you want it, a job flying for my company. Not as a favor, because you've earned it." Leona opened the folder. Inside were papers, flight school enrollment forms, everything she needed to make her dream real. She thought about the girl she had been 2 months ago, the girl carrying drink trays, invisible to people like Richard Hale, the girl who whispered her dreams so quietly, afraid someone might hear. That girl was gone now. "I'm going to do it," Leona said. "Not just for me, for my dad, and for every girl who gets told she doesn't belong in the sky." Richard smiled. It was a sad smile, but a real one. "I know you will." 1 year later, Leona walked across the runway at Riverside Airfield, wearing a pilot's uniform. The insignia on her shoulder gleamed in the sun. She had earned her commercial pilot's license, top of her class, and she had started her own company. A small one, just 2 planes at first, but it was hers. The sign on the hangar read, Carter Wings Aviation. Her mother stood beside her, crying happy tears. Your father would be so proud, baby, so proud. Leona looked up at the sky. A jet flew overhead, leaving white trails in the blue. She imagined her father up there somewhere, watching her, smiling. I made it, Dad, she whispered. I'm flying. The sky didn't care who you were. It didn't care if you started out carrying drink trays or sitting in mansions. It only cared if you were brave enough to spread your wings. And Leona Carter had learned to soar. What would you do if someone told you that you didn't belong? Would you prove them wrong, like Leona did? Would you choose forgiveness, even when it's hard? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more powerful stories about courage, dignity, and the strength we find when the world tells us we're not enough. Remember, the sky doesn't care where you started. It only cares where you're brave enough to go. See you in the next story.